Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Built in the Borderland. I am Robert Holguin. Today we continue with our ongoing conversation about immigration and the current situation at the southwest border. Right now I'm at a migrant shelter in Ciudad Juarez that's providing shelter to some 130 mostly Central American migrants. So we will talk to them about what they are hoping will change when it comes to the asylum process, and we will talk to volunteers here at the shelter about the difficulties they face as more migrants continue to arrive here at the border.
I don't know how we're going to help them other than to provide them what we can, you know. I'd like to have more beds, I'd like to have more buildings, but we need help.
About a mile behind the border wall, in the Anapra neighborhood of Ciudad Juarez, you'll find this former church that's now a crowded migrant shelter.
Inside the church you can see how the main stage is covered with the pews, so they do have church in here from time to time, but most of what's in here now are sleeping pads. You can see they don't have many possessions, you know, they go over here and they eat, and this is where they spend during the day, and they're just hoping that someone's going to help them. So that's why we're here. We're here to help these people.
Rick LoBello lives in El Paso. He's worked at the El Paso Zoo for almost 2 decades, but he's also a volunteer at this shelter, where he spends several hours a week trying to improve the quality of life for these migrants, who wait here, sometimes for months or even years, for their asylum claims to be heard.
And so this other area here where you see everybody walking around is just like a common area where people just spend the day and talk to each other and wait, because most of them have already applied for asylum, and they're just waiting for the process where someone will contact them and say it's okay to come to the crossings.
So would you say that around January, as the number of migrants coming to the border begins to increase, that's when you guys have to shift gears?
Yes, it really was. There were hundreds of people who came in 2020, but once the new year started, it increased dramatically. Back in, say, the September, we might have 50, but now it's tripled to over 150. And I don't know what the solution is, really. I mean, I'm hoping that our government and the Mexican government are going to come up with a solution. The people that can't legally get across end up staying here in Juarez and start their lives. I've met some people who have been here that couldn't legally get across, so they just stayed in Juarez and are living here now.
Me da mucho gusto de estar aquí.
I also spoke to Lizabeth Jimenez, who came to the shelter in March with her infant daughter. Like the tens of thousands before her, she made the dangerous trek from Guatemala in search of a better life. She says there's no work in her country, no hope. But when she was turned away at the border, she found herself on the streets of Juarez. So she's deeply grateful for the shelter and the workers who've offered her a safe place to wait out the asylum process. I asked her if the risks she took in getting here are worth it, and she answers quickly, yes, that for her, there was no alternative.
It is a very vulnerable population, and right now, you know, we tell people they can't go out at night, but we really want to protect them from all the possible dangers outside. So I'm hoping to find a contractor, we're looking for one now, who would come and help us come up with a good security fence to put all around this area. I don't think it would cost that much.
In collaboration with the church, Rick has created a website, treeofhopes.com, where people can donate to help the Aposento Alto shelter.
And we need people who speak Spanish. We could use people who like to teach. These kids don't have no school. They're just waiting. And I don't know how we're going to help them other than to provide them what we can, you know. I'd like to have more beds, I'd like to have more buildings, but we need help. And that's why I asked you guys to come over, is so more people could hear the story and perhaps help. We just can't ignore what's going on here on our border.
Coming up after the break, we talk to Republican Congressman Tony Gonzales, who represents parts of Far East El Paso. He is talking to us about what he would like to see get done when it comes to the immigration process and the asylum system.
What needs to happen is the immigration system needs to be reformed in a manner that encourages legal immigration for those that want to come and live the American dream.
Freshman Republican Congressman Tony Gonzales has been a vocal critic of the Biden administration's approach to immigration. So we talked to him about a new bipartisan group of lawmakers that are proposing an alternative immigration bill. First of all, Congressman, it's been a few months since we last chatted, so it's good to see you.
Yeah, great to chat with you again, Robert.
Congressman, you were part of a Republican delegation that came down to the border to El Paso back in March that included House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. That was then. We're now in May. What is your response to the current situation at the border?
Yeah, I'm very disappointed. That's the word. I'm disappointed in the administration because bottom line is you got to put your money where your mouth is, and showing up matters. And the fact that they haven't shown up to the border to see it firsthand, but more importantly, to listen to others that see it every day is very frustrating. I haven't stopped bringing people to the border. Matter of fact, we've got 2 delegations coming to El Paso this weekend. And for me, the goal is to bring people out to the border that don't know what it looks like, and for have them to see it firsthand. Because before you can write legislation or pass legislation, I think it's important that you see the border if you're going to write legislation on the border.
Okay, to that end, you've been working with your colleagues in the Senate on what you're calling a border solutions package. What would that entail?
Yeah, I'm proud to work with my colleagues on the Bipartisan Border Solutions Act, and myself and Congressman Henry Cuellar, a Democrat to the south of me, have come together, as well as Senator Cornyn, Republican from Texas, and Senator Sinema, a Democrat from Arizona. We've all come together in a bipartisan, bicameral way to help to begin to try to solve this border crisis that we have. And this is what this bill does. 3 things. I mean, it does a few things, but I'm going to highlight the three most important areas. 1, it takes Border Patrol agents out of the processing business and puts them back out in the field. That's important, right? It's important to keep our national security safe. 2, it adds 150 immigration judges to the equation. Right now, you come over, you get processed, and your court date is in 2 years. It shouldn't be that way. It should be in 2 days. And by adding immigration judges, that's important to the equation. And then the third thing that I want to highlight is right now, these unaccompanied children, which, oh, by the way, there's over 20,000 of them, and that number is only growing. Once they're processed through HHS and they're sent off with their sponsor, nobody follows up on. It's important that we track these children to make sure they're not put in dangerous situations. What worries me is we're going to have a generation of children that are forgotten, that are who knows what situation they get sent into.
MPP, otherwise known as the Remain in Mexico program, was dissolved by President Biden once he took office. And since that happened, you've got about 8,400 individuals who were in that program who have entered the U.S. to have their asylum claims evaluated. So you just mentioned that your Border Solutions Act would add judges because many of these people will end up waiting sometimes years to have those cases evaluated.
Yeah, it's completely broken. And, it's very clear, this administration in February, they did away with the Remain in Mexico policy. They did away with Title 42 for unaccompanied minors. They did away with the PACER program. They did away with these things. And we saw an immediate influx of migrants. And that number hasn't gone down for as much as, the administration has tried to spin it. That number has not gone down. The numbers are still as high as they've ever been. The solution is, there are absolutely people that have warranted claims for fear in others. And it's unfair to those people for them to not get a court date and for them to not, be given those rights. To have someone say, hey, we'll see you in 2 years, that's a broken system.
Oh, okay, well, let's drill down on what you just said there. You just made a distinction. You said there are people who have legitimate asylum claims. Now, if you talk to migrants, if you interview any of them for an extended period of time, you realize that a lot of them also are dealing with economic circumstances. So they are what some people would call economic migrants. Do you think that that is a valid reason to claim asylum in this country?
I think what we need to have happen is we need to expand our work visas. So to encourage folks that want to come here for economic purposes to work and like I said, live the American dream. If we expand that, encourage others to come through the front door, guess what? Then they don't have to go through coyotes and cartels and make this dangerous trek along the way, because like I said, it's unfair to them. I get it. They're trying to leave their life in pursuit of a better life. Well, why can't America have a front door that encourages those that want to come over and work? And I'm not just talking about in the agriculture industry. I'm talking other industries as well. And there are policy things that we can do. If you mentioned earlier, if you're leaving your host nation, let's say Honduras or Guatemala, and for various reasons, why can't your claim, happen near that southern Mexican border? Why do you have to make that dangerous trek all the way to the American border to then just be turned around?
Mira, mejor tú quédate en Guatemala y haces el asilio en ese país, en vez de llegar aquí a la frontera y quedarte aquí en esa situación peligrosa. ¿Qué es lo que les comentarías a esas personas?
Porque estando en Guatemala.
Back at the shelter in Juarez, I asked Lizabeth Jimenez about that possibility that people should be able to apply for asylum in their own country. She says it would never work. She says the government of Guatemala is corrupt and would never follow up on any of the promises. She says it wouldn't stop her from making the trip because she has no faith in her government getting anything done. Coming up after the break, we are talking about the asylum process and the inequities within the system with a researcher from Syracuse University. Stay with us. Remember that almost all of these migrants here along the southwest border are seeking asylum in the U.S. They are making an asylum claim, and they're hoping to be allowed into the country as that claim makes its way through the immigration court system. But I spoke to a researcher at Syracuse University who says that there are invisible inequities in that system, that it sometimes just comes down to where you are making that asylum claim.
So this report looks at the migrants who have come to the U.S.-Mexico border to seek asylum and were put into what are called the migrant protection protocols. Now, this report was written based on data that we received from the federal government through the Freedom of Information Act. We get updated data from them every month, and we use that data and analyze that data to provide the public with insight about how the immigration system really works on the inside.
I found this interesting because, again, what you said in your closing thoughts here was what should be a straightforward process, because it's laid out legally in terms of what people are supposed to do. That straightforward process doesn't seem to exist, or at least it's clouded. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And this is something that we have reported on for years and years now. MPP is just really the most recent inequity that migrants who are requesting asylum face. One of the things that we know about the immigration court system already is that the outcome of asylum cases very often depend more on the chance of which judge you get in which city you happen to be in, much more than even the quality of case. You could have a really strong case, and if you're in Atlanta, Georgia, where the denial rate is 99%, you're very unlikely to win. On the other hand, if you go to New York City, where the denial rate is less than 50%, a case that is still a good case but may not be a slam dunk case, has a better chance than a very strong case somewhere else. And I think that would strike most people as an inequality that's built into the system that would be meaningful. It would be important to find some meaningful solutions to, but it doesn't make sense to me necessarily to erect more inequities to deal with the existing ones. It seems to me like there's widespread consensus among the public and even among politicians that some form of reform is needed.
In a related development, the Biden administration announced last week that it would allow 250 asylum seekers a day into the U.S. to pursue their cases here, up from about 50 a day. Critics of the Biden administration say it's the wrong move.
And I think it's absolutely the wrong approach. It is one more way that they're not discouraging, but encouraging illegal immigration on a massive scale. They've literally, I can't think of a single step that this administration has taken to actually stem the flow of illegal immigration as opposed to facilitate the flow. It's like they are a participant in the human trafficking chain. And this is just one more way to do it. And they rely on, it's the children, so everyone will have different feelings for that. And of course, everybody does. But when you've already got tens of thousands of children you've encouraged to come across the border separated from their parents, they're encouraging family separation, if not accomplishing it themselves. And that's what this is going to encourage more of.
But Coker argues that seeking asylum is a guaranteed right, unless the law is changed.
The question of what the right policy is up to the government and elected officials. We don't really take positions on policy, but I would just simply say, when it comes to what the law is, and for those who proudly claim the banner of law and order, whatever anyone may think of refugees and migrants coming to the border to request asylum, the law says that they have a right to request asylum and to be processed in a fair way. If they want to change the law about how that works, I suppose that's up to Congress. But Congress has set the law. Congress passed legislation in 1980 establishing the Refugee Act. And the Refugee Act provides a mechanism for people to request asylum who are fleeing violence. And it's not really up to you or I or politicians to decide who has a legitimate claim. It's up to the immigration judges and the asylum officers who are specialists in that to decide that. And so we should just let them do their job and not undermine what is the lawful process.
We will be right back right after this break. And that does it for this week's edition of Built in the Borderland. I want to thank everyone who was able to talk to me this week about this very important topic. And I want to thank you for tuning in. I will be back here next week. Until then, I am Robert Holguin. Stay safe, everyone.